The Battle of Cannae was a key engagement of the Second Punic War between the Roman Republic and Carthage, fought on the 2nd of August 216 BC near the ancient village of Cannae in Apulia, southeast Italy. In just a single afternoon, nearly 1/5 of Rome's adult male population was wiped out. At Cannae, Rome fielded the largest army in its history and watched it die in the dust. The battlefield was so choked with corpses that survivors later said you could walk across piles of bodies without touching the ground. This was not just a defeat. This was Rome's darkest nightmare, made real. Having recovered from their losses at Trebia and Lake Trasimene, the Romans decided to engage Hannibal at Cannae with approximately 86,000 Roman and allied Socii troops. They massed their heavy infantry in a deeper formation than usual, while Hannibal used the double envelopment tactic and surrounded his enemy, trapping the majority of the Roman army, who were then slaughtered. The loss of life on the Roman side meant it was one of the most lethal single days of fighting in history. The Roman Republic believed numbers would guarantee victory. They sent 80,000 infantry and 6,000 cavalry, a force so massive that ancient writers claimed the earth shook as the legions marched. After the losses in Trebia and Lake Trasimene, the Romans appointed Quintus Fabius Maximus Verrucosus as dictator to deal with the threat. Fabius used attrition warfare against Hannibal, cutting off his supply lines and avoiding pitched battles. These tactics proved unpopular with the Romans, as they recovered from the shock of Hannibal's victories, began to question the wisdom of the Fabian strategy, which had given the Carthaginian army a chance to regroup. The majority of Romans were eager to see a quick conclusion to the war. It was feared that if Hannibal continued plundering Italy unopposed, Rome's allies might defect to the Carthaginian side for self-preservation. On the other side, their opponent, Hannibal Barca, stood with about 50,000 troops, a mixed army of Africans, Iberians, and Gauls, many of them far from home. But Hannibal wasn't interested in matching Rome's strength. He was about to humiliate it with genius. In the spring of 216 BC, Hannibal took the initiative and seized the large supply depot at Cannae in the Apulian plain, placing himself between the Romans and their crucial source of supply. As Polybius noted, the capture of Cannae caused great commotion in the Roman army, for it was not only the loss of the place and the stores in it that distressed them, but the fact that it commanded the surrounding district. The consuls, resolving to confront Hannibal, marched southward in search of him. After 2 days' march, they found him on the left bank of the river Aufidus and encamped 8 kilometers away. Instead of hiding his weaker troops, Hannibal placed them in the front center, deliberately baiting the Romans. His formation bulged outward like a bowstring. Behind them, his strongest African infantry waited quietly, ready to swing the sword of fate. On the flanks, his cavalry, led by the brilliant Maharbal, were poised to strike. This wasn't a simple defense. It was a carefully prepared killing ground. Hannibal sent a small contingent of 500 to 600 mercenaries to pretend to desert to the Roman side. Those men, Celtiberians, according to Appian, and Numidians, according to Livy, handed their weapons to the Romans as a sign of goodwill, while retaining hidden short swords in their clothes. Once the battle started, following Hannibal's plans, the mercenaries attacked, stealing weapons and shields from their victims and causing chaos and confusion in the Roman camp. However, the veracity of this part is disputed. At dawn, dust clouds filled the air as Roman horns signaled the advance. Tightly packed legionaries drove forward like a human hammer, smashing into Hannibal's center. The Carthaginian line bent, and seemed about to break. But it was all part of the plan. Step by step, the Romans were being pulled into a shrinking pocket, blinded by their own momentum. Suddenly, Hannibal gave the signal. His African infantry, fresh and disciplined, wheeled inward from the flanks, striking the Romans' sides. At the same moment, Carthaginian cavalry destroyed Rome's horsemen, then rode behind the legions. The trap closed. For the first time in history, an army of tens of thousands was completely encircled, the first true double envelopment. What followed was not a battle, but an execution. The Romans, packed shoulder to shoulder, could not raise their arms or even breathe. Soldiers suffocated in the crush before a blade ever touched them. Others were trampled underfoot as panic spread. Polybius writes that of the Roman and allied infantry, 70,000 were killed, 10,000 captured, and, perhaps, 3,000 survived. He also reports that of the 6,000 Roman and allied cavalry, only 370 survived, while, on the other hand, Hannibal's losses at about 8,000 of his bravest men. Polybius reports 5,700 dead, 4,000 Gauls, 1,500 Hispanics and Africans, and 200 cavalry. The killing was so relentless that Carthaginian soldiers grew exhausted from stabbing. By nightfall, the ground was red with Roman blood, and Hannibal's men stood victorious over a sea of corpses. Entire families were erased. Some Roman senators learned their sons, brothers, and fathers had all died in a single day. Panic gripped Rome. Temples filled with weeping women, and mass graves were dug outside the city. The Republic banned public mourning for fear the grief would break its spirit. And yet, despite losing almost 20% of its fighting men in one battle, Rome did not surrender. After the battle, the commander of the Numidian cavalry, Maharbal, urged Hannibal to seize the opportunity and march immediately on Rome. Instead, Hannibal sent a delegation, led by Carthalo, to negotiate a peace treaty with the Senate on moderate terms. Despite the multiple catastrophes Rome had suffered, the Senate refused to parley. The Battle of Cannae is remembered not only as the greatest tactical masterpiece of antiquity, but also as a testament to Rome's unbreakable will. One day of horror nearly destroyed the Republic, but in surviving it, Rome proved why it would eventually rule the world. Subscribe to this channel for more historical videos like this.